Siberia is a separate world. 13 million square kilometers is more than the entire territory. Canada is bigger than the USA and Western Europe combined. Approximately 77% of the territory of Russia. And at the same time, about 40 million people live here. You can go by train for 7 days, and outside the window will be change-only forest taiga. Solid taiga. It means that there are settlements where there is no road at all, only helicopter only. River. In summer, only winter road, frozen on ice in winter. Siberia. Dangerous. It exists by its own rules, and if you violated them, no one will come to the rescue because there is no one around. And at the same time, Siberia keeps secrets, some of the most amazing. On the planet in Yakutia, in the valley of the river, Indigirka stands, Emakon, about 500 residents. There is a school shop house. Culture's the most common rural settlement, with one exception. It's official. Coldest permanently inhabited place on Earth. On February 6, 1933, a temperature of -67, as much as 0.7 of a degree Celsius, was recorded here. This is an official record for settlements. But the locals claim that in some winters the mercury column dropped below just without official registration, the boldest estimates -71. At -67, the air isn't just cold, it is dangerous by itself. Rubber cracks metal, becomes brittle as glass. Exhaled air immediately is freezing, you hear? A quiet, crunchy sound, it crystallizes your breath. Local, call it shop from the stars. Batteries sit down for minutes. Cars do not jam in winter because they cannot get started. Cameras stop working already. At -40, just freezes the lubricant in the mechanism. Fuel. Imikoni should always be if the pipes freeze not. There will be heat if there is no heat. The house will freeze a few hours, so there is no central heating in. Each house has its own stock, and here live people constantly all year round, generation after generation. The Yakut breed of horses exists only here. These are the only horses in the world capable of independently extracting food from under the snow with hooves in extreme frost conditions. No other breed of horse survives in those conditions without human help, but that's what's real. Strikes in the vicinity of Kaimakon from permafrost regularly thaw out mammoths' whole carcasses with soft fabrics with wool. Locals are accustomed to the fact that a tusk sticks out of the clipping bank of the river. Sometimes this is not news. This is just life at the pole of cold. June 30th, 1908, 7:17. In the morning, over the taiga, in the river basin, under the stone Tunguska, in the sky, something happened. A grand explosion, estimated at between 10 and 15 megatons of TNT equivalent. This is about 1,000 times more powerful than the atomic bomb. The shockwave circled the Earth twice and was recorded by seismic stations around the planet. In London, thousands of kilometers, barometers recorded a pressure drop. In the night hours in Europe, it was light as day. The atmosphere glowed for several nights in a row. Newspapers wrote about white nights in July. The first expedition reached the place only in 1927th year after 19 years. Why so long? Because this is Siber Swamps Taiga. Off-road, just get there already. Feet what found. 2,150 square kilometers of paved forest. The trees lie evenly, all trunks pointed from the center of the explosion, as if someone put a giant fan in the sky, and no crater, no fragments of anything. The general accepted modern version. A small asteroid or comet entered the atmosphere at an acute angle and exploded at an altitude of about 5 to 10 kilometers, before reaching the surface, an air explosion of enormous power. This explains the absence of a crater. But here's what never ceases to surprise. After 115 years, scientists continue to argue about the details of which object. Why not find a single fragment? Several expeditions found alleged microscopic particles in peat. But their interpretation is controversial. The Lena River is one of the largest rivers, world length about 4,400 kilometers. By the amount of water it carries to the north. The Arctic Ocean, it is among the 10 largest rivers of the planet, about 180 kilometers north of Yakutsk. The river passes through a place that is inscribed on the UNESCO World Heritage List. Rock columns up to 100 meters high lined up along the coast for about 40 kilometers. They stand vertically close to each other like giant palisade. Some have fancy tower figure shapes, silhouettes. This is one of the most striking landscapes of Russia, but getting here is not easy. The nearest road ends. Far further, only the river, but most importantly, not the pillars themselves. What happens to the banks of Lena everywhere, where there are no rocks? For most of its course, the Lena cuts through the banks of permafrost. These shores are 100-meter vertical cliffs from frozen soil. In summer, the sun and water flood them from below and above, and they collapse, not gradually eroded. It is collapsing huge blocks of frozen soil, sometimes the size of a multi-story building, fall off the coast and fall into the water every year. The coastline in some places retreats tens of meters. And that's what makes it truly exciting. Inside these shores, thousands of years preserved history. When a piece breaks off, the coast of it melts everything that was frozen there. Mammoth bones, carcasses of woolly rhinoceroses, remains of ancient plants, tools of parking man who stood here when the shore was far from the water. Local Yakuts and scientists regularly find along the shores of the Lena what melted out after another mammoth tusk collapse. Lie right on the shallows, sometimes find whole, soft tissue carcasses with wool, with stomach contents. One of these carcasses found in 2020 year contained so well preserved DNA samples that geneticists were able to conduct a full analysis. Well, that's the tragedy. Most of the finds die. The carcass melted out of the permafrost begins to decompose in a few days. If no one was near, it goes into the water along with the next collapse of the coast. 1,000 years of preservation, and a few days before disappearing forever. Lena consumes her story faster than people have time to study it in Yakutia and the river basin Valui and remote areas of taiga. Local Evenki from generation to generation pass on history about strange places. They call them Yaluyu Circassian, roughly Death Valley or Cauldron. According to the descriptions of the Evenks in certain places of the taiga, near the swampy lowlands, metal domes stick out of the ground, semicircular, smooth, flowing into the ground around them. Special vegetation. The grass is unusually high and lush, as if the soil here is especially nutritious. Metal domes, according to those who allegedly touch them. Unusual, does not rust, doesn't heat up in the sun, doesn't react to tools. Hunters who spent the night near these domes complained of malaise, some of them, long-term health problems after such overnight stays. Several expeditions tried find these objects. Some found nothing, others reported that they saw something resembling a description but could not fix coordinates in impassable taiga. Mosquito swamps, lack of landmarks, place which doesn't want to be found. There are several natural gas structures emerging through frozen soils and creating characteristic forms of metal natural formations from iron-containing rocks. Relics of classified Soviet objects, documentation on which is not declassified. No version is finally accepted. Local peoples have been bypassing these places for several generations and do not lead anyone there. Seals live in Baikal, it seems. Totally impossible. Baikal Lake. Fresh water in the heart of Asia, thousands of kilometers away from any sea, the nearest ocean. The Arctic Ocean is separated by a huge distance and several mountain systems. The Baikal seal is the only freshwater seal in the world, living in complete isolation from the sea. There are about 100,000 of them in Baikal. They live in all year round, in winter under the ice, where they themselves support. I gnaw holes for breathing or with the claws of my front paws. How did they end up here? The official version is their ancestors penetrated from the Arctic Ocean through river systems during the Ice Age, when river levels were different, and stayed and adapted to fresh water. But that's what amazes scientists. It required radical physiological adaptation of seals. Depend on the salt of their kidneys, metabolism. All biochemistry is tuned to salt water. Baikal seal knows she completely rebuilt her body for thousands of years, is one of the fastest evolutionary transitions recorded in mammals, and another fact that is difficult to explain. Seals dive to a depth of 400 meters and delayed. Breathing up to 70 minutes is records for seals. Baikal did. They're best dressers in their kind nowhere else, and who has a lake? Changed animal became unique and nowhere. There's nothing like this anymore on Earth. In the Yamal Nenets Autonomous Okrug in 2014, reindeer herders noticed a huge crater in the middle of the tundra, perfectly round, with a diameter of about 60 meters, where the day before there was a flat surface. No trace of a fallen meteorite. Crater from explosion outside funnel formed from inside. Explanation: under tundra in layers of permafrost. Formed pingo icy. Hill rising from below under the pressure of methane gas. Stand out. When frozen organic matter melts, it accumulates. Under the ice cap, the pressure builds up for months sometimes. Years. Nothing on the surface of this does not give, and in what? That moment, breakthrough ground literally fires cork. Soil release goes tens of meters up to 2,000. 23rd year of such craters recorded. More than 20 only in Jamaica, but this is what they found. Yamal is difficult to access, and a significant part of it in general, not visited by people. How many craters? Formed in places where they did not reach unknown. Which is especially impressive. They are absolutely unpredictable. No warning. Signs on the surface: flat tundra and explosion from the inside. In 2020, your helicopter flying around Yamal accidentally filmed the moment a new crater formed. This first video recording? The process of looking at her for a creepy second and in the ground. Whole Earth in Siberia explodes without warning, without schedules. In Khakassia, in the Minasinsk Basin, there is Lake Itikul, small, beautiful, surrounded by steppe hills from the shores. View which, I want to take pictures. There are no fish in it at all. It's not because there are no nutrients nearby, ordinary steppe lakes full of life. It's not because there is no oxygen. Chemical analysis of the water shows nothing critically abnormal. The water looks normal, smells normal from the look of it. Ordinary steppe lake, and yet nothing alive. No algae in noticeable quantities. No crustaceans, no molluscs. Water is sterile, local. Shorts and kakas have avoided this lake historically, and it is connected with places where another world is closer to. Surfaces, it's called differently in different texts. But always marked dangerous. Fishermen don't put here. Networks, not because nothing to catch, but because they do not want to be here. One of the scientific hypotheses in the lake: there are natural processes. The concentration of certain minerals or periodic emissions of gases from bottom sediments that make it unsuitable for life. But there is no complete explanation. The lake was studied and each time went unanswered. Lake stands in steppe, beautiful, quiet, empty. Trans-Siberian, Highway 9,288 kilometers, the longest iron road in the world, connects Moscow with Vladivostok. It was built from 1891 to 1916th year, 25 years without modern technology, without excavators, without concrete mixers, without satellite navigation, through the taiga, through the swamp, through the mountains, through the Baikal. In some areas it was necessary to blow up the rocks manually, meter by meter on the Baikal site. The most difficult, the builders laid the canvas right along the rocky shore hanging over the lake. One wrong step, and the worker went into the water from a cliff. The construction of the Trans-Siberian Railway is considered one of the greatest engineering achievements of mankind. Not because it is technically difficult, although it is also too, but because it is Siberia. Every kilometer of the road, now about 100 million tons of cargo and millions of passengers are transported annually along the Transsib. But that's what few people know. Part of the route is still unstable. Permafrost periodically deforms the canvas. The soil under the rails then freezes, then thaws. The embankment sags the speed of trains. In certain areas is forcibly limited, not because there are no locomotives, but because the road will not withstand greater speed. The longest railway in the world, and it's still partially unreliable because Siberia is too big, too cold, too lively. Its surface is constantly moving on. East of Yakutia in the mountains of the Amakon Highlands exists. Lake Lebenkir to get here is extremely difficult. A few days on an all-terrain vehicle off-road, then on foot on a mountain. Tundra tourists here, practically no scientists either. A little just get there already expedition, but the lake has a reputation. Local evanks have been talking about creature living in the depths of Habenkir Hell, so they call it in translation huge dark, and sometimes appears on the surface and then the fishermen leave the water. This sounds like a legend, but here are the facts. In the 1950s, the Soviet geologist Viktor Solid-Klebov compiled an official report on the observation of a large unknown creature on the Alabinkere. It was a state specialist, neither a romantic nor a mystic, who submitted an official document. In the Soviet system, it was a serious matter, and thousands of 13th-year Russian divers spent dive into the Lebinker at the bottom. They found something unexpected, huge bones and jaw of a large animal. The jaw clearly did not belong to any of the known animals of this region. The type of creature has not been definitively identified. Lake deep to 60 meters, very cold. Water transparency is low, practically not studied. Despite the reputation, no one knows what exactly lives or lived in Lubinker, and this is pure truth. In Siberia, there is a natural phenomenon about which it is not written in textbooks. Its unofficial name, glass taiga, in certain conditions as a rule after a sharp thaw followed by rapid freezing. The entire landscape is covered with the thinnest layer of transparent ice. Not snow, not ordinary ice exactly. Transparent ice like glass trees. Branches, grass, every stem, every stone. Everything in a perfectly transparent ice shell, ice like that. Thin, that through it you can see every vein of the sheet. Every crack in the bark, but at the same time it is durable. Try. Break the branch, and it does not bend, but cracks like porcelain. In sunny weather, a sight that is described as a forest from crystal. Every surface refracts the light of 1,000 small rainbows in each direction. In the dark, every surface reflects the moon. And taiga glows from the inside. Those who saw it say no. Words that convey this. Exactly, but that's why it's dangerous. Ice covers everything, including the grass that the deer is looking for. Animals cannot get to food. Hooves, slip. Nass doesn't make its way. Reindeer zipped. And such icing can seriously suffer for a few days, literally in a field of food you can't get. Local reindeer herders of the Nenets and Dolgan peoples know this phenomenon. They call it a rough year. After such icing follows a long period of herd recovery. Sometimes a few years. Chukotka is the most eastern region of Russia. Here ends Eurasia. Distance from Turquoise Strait to Alaska, about 86 kilometers in clear weather with Chukchi Coast. Visible. Alaska is literally visible to the naked eye. Two continents, Eurasia and North America, are separated by each other from another distance less than from Moscow to Tula, and at the same time there are two different countries between them. Two different time zones separated by a change line. That stand on the shore and watch another day. The population of Chukotka is about 50,000 people on an area of 720,000 square kilometers. This is one of the most sparsely populated places on Earth. But the Chukotka was not always so empty. In the Ice Age, when sea level was well below the barongs, the strait did not exist. In its place was land, Beringia, wide, rich. The land between the two continents is not narrow path, real land with rivers, vegetation, animals. That is why the bridge ancestors of the indigenous peoples of America came to a new world perhaps from 15 to 20,000 years ago, and possibly much earlier. It means Chukotka. Tundra on which reindeer walk is the road along which America settled. The road that then went underwater, and today there. Where was the land of the Berengava Strait, and at its bottom it is possible, and traces of the first settlers. Parking guns bone. No one was looking for them on bottom of the strait. Systematically, technically, it is extremely difficult. Cold water, strong currents, great depth. This is one of the few places on Earth where you can lie. Direct evidence of the settlement of America, and it is under water in one of the most inaccessible places on the planet, too. Mainland 1 straight and mystery underwater on 13 million square kilometers of Earth exploding. From inside, the riverbanks collapse, taking with them millennia of lake history keep the essence in which no one described frost turning air. Something that cannot be inhaled without consequences, and all this people live, Yevenki Yakuts, Nenets, Chukchi peoples, who have mastered this world thousands of years ago and know it as it does not know. No expedition. Siberia is dangerous for those who came here without knowledge, and fine for those who are with her. Grown up, thank you for watching. Have a great day to you.